Hello all, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Nate, and this is Nate's Vintage Trains. Today's video is another installment of my 12 Days of Christmas. This is number 4. I'm covering each day one notable or famous member of Southern California Live Steamers. Today's video, I will be discussing composer David Rose. Before we get into his collection of trains, let's talk about where he's from and how he is well known, or famous in some way. Born in London, England on June 15th, 1910, he moved with his family soon after he was born, and he was raised in Chicago. He learned to play the piano and worked for a band before becoming a standby pianist for NBC Radio in the early 1930s in Chicago. Eventually, he moved to California to work in Hollywood, and he became good friends with Red Skelton. He would be on his radio show for the next 20 years as an arranger and composer for Red Skelton show's music. Some of his more famous songs that he wrote himself as singles include Calypso Melody, Holiday for Strings, and Poinciana. He was also involved in a number of films with their musical scores, including 1959's Operation Petticoat, whom he composed the music with Henry Mancini. Some TV shows he was involved with for composing music again are Bonanza, Highway to Heaven, The Red Skelton Show, Leave It to Beaver, and Little House on the Prairie. For Little House on the Prairie, he would win 2 Emmys. Now, let's get into his trains. By 1941, Rose purchased a house in Long Ridge Estates area of Sherman Oaks. He built his railway to 7.5-inch gauge, 1.5-inch scale, which is about 1/8 scale, around his whole home. He even had the track go right through his summer house. That year, he also married famous actress Judy Garland. This was Rose's second marriage, however. David said in a 1941 interview, soon after he married Judy, "We spend whole afternoons with the fool thing. She doesn't love it as much as I do, but she loves it. She'll come out and play fireman, pull on a pair of gloves, watch the steam gauge, pour in coal. I'm the boss, she follows orders. Gets coal all over her arms and grease and her face. She looks as cute as a monkey." David Rose would soon become friends with people like Richard Bagley, Dick Jackson, Bob Day, and Lester Friend. In fact, Walt Disney even visited his home on one occasion in 1949. While they were married, David and Judy, the railway was called the Gar-Rose Railway. After they divorced in 1944, the railroad was renamed to the Holiday Special. Rose's collection included many British and European designed locomotives, since he was born in Europe, specifically London, as I said. His collection also included old toys and miniature stationary locomotives. He was a member of Southern California Live Steamers, but would also frequent Golden Gate Live Steamers. In a 1954 article of the Miniature Locomotive magazine, written by Dick Bagley, I first met Dave many years ago, almost at the beginning of his climb to fame. The interest that brought us together was miniature railroading, as you might have guessed. He was awaiting delivery of his first 1.5-inch scale locomotive. It was an amusement park loco built by Bill Daney of Pueblo, Colorado. Track and rolling stock had already arrived and the track laid down ready for operation. Everything was in readiness, but we had no motive power because the 20-year-old loco was in the back shop receiving a general overhaul to put her in first-class shape. Dave wasn't anxious for the loco to arrive. The airmail letters, telegrams, and phone calls between Los Angeles and Colorado were just to keep tab on progress. This story wouldn't be complete unless I tell you about another live steamer who I met on the same occasion. His name was Todd Purcell. Todd was Dave's master mechanic and real live steamer from the word go. His workmanship wasn't the most beautiful that I've seen, but it was perhaps due to what he had to work with, or rather without. Dave's shop was in its infancy and not too well equipped. Todd could do more with a pair of pliers and a hunk of balling wire than any man I have met before or since. Todd knew machinery and he knew locomotives. Working with him put quite a few of the tricks in this old bag. He was retired and could have lived the rest of his life in ease, but preferred to work on the small locos. Todd claimed to be the originator of small workshop tools and had copies of his old catalogs to show that he had put them on the market. Finally, the great day came. The 900-pound Pacific-type locomotive arrived. Dave and Todd used to clock each other to see who could make it around the 800-foot loop of track faster. I still think Dave could have won only if the little chugger would have stayed on the track. She seemed to like the porch in his patio. At least she would hop on the curve at that point, and one time almost made it up the 3 steps. Now maybe you will say that isn't railroading. I will readily agree and frankly admit that I wanted no part in it, nor had I. But when you understand the promptings, certainly you will share my tolerance. This was a relaxation for Dave. His work was often very pressing, with difficult scores to write and deadlines that had to be met. Apparently, reckless abandon sometimes helps to relieve the tension of hard work. Throughout the years, Dave has made a sizable collection of locomotives in several gauges and other interesting engines. Some of them were made in the US and others came from Europe, mostly England. Among stationary engines, there are different models common to old popcorn vending wagons. His toy collection of years gone by would be the envy of many a hobbyist. Among all of my friends there isn't one live steamer more enthusiastic or imbued with our hobby than is David Rose. Yet his great talent is music, and there it lies. He truthfully and sadly laments his lack of ability in mechanics and makes you love him for it because he tries so hard and so cheerfully. He struggles and works to take locos and other engines apart, then works even harder to put them back together again. Dave says that may not mean anything to you, but for him it is an achievement that someday he will hope to build a locomotive complete. Dave's railroad always moves with him. The 7¼ inch line laid in 3 different locations before coming to rest at his present home in San Fernando Valley. The name Holiday Special reflects his feeling of relaxation. Events are another matter. You never know what quite to expect when paying Dave a visit. Golden Spike Day on the present line was celebrated by steaming the new Royal Scot recently purchased from Bassett Loke, and one of the most grand and glorious wrecks of David's long career. A number of his close friends and live steamers were on hand for the occasion. If you're a live steamer, you will always be welcome at Rose's. The loco was steaming fine. Perhaps that was just the requirement to induce an unsuspecting Dave. His attorney's wife and children climbed aboard for the first ride. Dave assured him that all was safe and nothing could possibly happen. They were dressed in their Sunday best. Engineer Rose pulled the throttle after giving the proper whistle signal, of course, and the eventful ride had begun. Smooth operation of the loco soon lulled Dave into ecstasy. Well, man and boy, Dave certainly had it. The loco stayed on the rails, but Dave and his friends in the cars became uncomfortably nestled in the bushes. A few bruises and scratches and torn clothes became the topic for cheerful discussion. Dave said his lesson has been learned. A curve should be banked. Not all of Dave's experiences are mishap, but his cheerful and enthusiastic attitude through it all seems best to portray his true love for live steam. He has enjoyed many successful, if uneventful, runs. Like other live steamers, Dave enjoys good fellowship and says that nowhere else in his life that he has found the warm-hearted companionship that exists among the people in our hobby. Just the other day, I asked Dave what he considered most important about our hobby, and he replied, "On a recent trip to England, I met a young old fellow, 78 years of age. He made his living building locomotives and selling them. The amazing thing about this boy was his pep and vigor and his love for his work. There wasn't a wrinkle on his face. That tells the whole story. If it weren't for the relaxation of my hobby, I don't know how it would be possible for me to carry on with the strain and pressure of everyday work. David Rose would continue enjoying his collection until his death in 1990 at the age of 80 years old. He is interred at Mount Sinai Memorial Park near Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills. His collection was sold off to various collectors and hobbyists, and many of his engines are still around today. His home, meanwhile, still stands and the railway is in place. This can be seen in recent photos and even satellite images of his home. Thank you all for watching this video. If you do like this sort of content, please subscribe, comment down below, like this video, and as always, I'm Nate for Nate's Vintage Trains, reminding you to keep it old school, and until next time, God bless you, and Merry Christmas.